Well, good morning, good afternoon, depending on what time zone. I'm Julia Grant, and Greg, who's also joining us on this call. We are kind of your controls team within Hagerman. We both come from that background. We've done this for a living in the past. So what we're here to talk about today is a piece of AutoCAD Electrical, and that's the environment file. So anybody who is using AutoCAD Electrical, most of you are aware of a .ENV file. And it is nothing other than a text file that controls paths and settings to allow the software to look at other places, such to a network drive, to look at report formats that you may all want to share, not just yourself. The big problem is that, again, it's a text file. So one of the issues, and we're going to talk through this, is that you have to use something like Notepad to edit it. It's also not very well documented. But why do you really care about the ENV file? If you are an independent person working on your own laptop, this file is not very critical to you because you can set within AutoCAD Electrical all the different things that we're going to be talking about. However, if you are sharing this within a team, that's a great example. You want everybody to look at the same symbols, the same reports, the same icon menus. You want to be able to share that data because it makes you more productive so that everybody's not doing their own thing or recreating the same drive symbol, so to speak. That allows you to share it. It allows you to share catalogs, different things like that. Greg and I come from an OEM background where we had to work with a lot of different companies. And I'm just going to use automotive as an example. Ford had a very different standard than General Motors. So when we were doing projects for Ford, we had to do things like their title blocks, their specific symbols, their specific configurations that may not have worked for GM. Same thing with GM, we had to do very specific things for them. So that's where the environment file is it's worth its weight in gold. It's just, again, it's not an easy file to necessarily understand. As I just said, even according to the Audit of Knowledge network, there is no wizard, there is no graphical user interface, not only to edit that file, but there's also no real help. There's not a true help file that puts what each of these variables does in what I consider human or engineering language, which is obviously showing a lot of graphics and truly explaining it. So what we've done over the last about year is that we've developed what we call the Hagerman Electrical Environment Connection. The purpose of this connector is simply to provide that graphical user interface to allow editing and understanding this file to make more sense. So I'm going to start here. Anybody who's opened up the ENV file, and by the way, you can have multiple ones, and you should if you need them, can see something like this. So I'll just use a good example. Maybe it's the schematic insert button. Well, you need to understand that it's the WD _INS, on and on and on. From there, you need to understand that an asterisk in front of that line disables the variable. When you remove the asterisk, it enables the variable. In order to set it, you need to type in this case, I was working on a project on a network drive that I had to literally type in F:/ACAD project, on and on and on, to start overwriting that specific path. Easy to mess up, easy to get frustrated, and yet it's something that a lot of us don't take advantage of because of kind of this barrier. So what we've done is that we've come up with an application. It works outside of AutoCAD Electrical. In reality, you don't even need AutoCAD Electrical on your computer, although it's obviously very helpful to test. And what we've done is we have taken each section. Keep in mind there are over 50 variables within AutoCAD Electrical's environment file. So what we've done is we've grouped these in areas that make sense, such as menus, such as projects, symbols, all the different aspects of that file. And through this interface, we can make changes by doing things like browsing or entering. We can do things like enable or disable variables right within this, so you don't have to remember that you need that asterisk or you want to get rid of that asterisk. The other real barrier that we found over the years, Greg and I kind of have joked over the years that we're always like pulling our notes out when we help customers configure this file for their needs. And we're like scrambling through 70 pages of notes that have been captured over the years, just so that we can refamiliarize ourselves with those different things. So what are we doing to try to help you? The first thing is, on the lower pane of the actual application, we have some help information. It's text-based, it is simple, it offers some best practices, or it even offers the fact that you may not even want to touch this variable. So in this particular case, this gives you a very high-level, overarching help on what does this specific variable do. But we also wanted to add some other information for people. So when you click on that little help, what will pop up are some help files that, in this specific case, is marked red. The reason it's marked red is that this is kind of a scary variable, in that you can change where AutoCAD Electrical is actually installed. That's not a good idea. So in these cases, and there's several, we have said, you know what, we're not going to let you do this via the application. We don't want to be responsible for that, and it's not a good idea to do it through this. The next pieces of the variable, we mark yellow. And when we say yellow, you might want to do it, but most of the time you don't really set these variables. But you can see in this, the insert wire notation. This shows you some graphics. This is what is going to happen depending on how you set that. If you set it to 0, you're not going to see those little green X's. But in a custom symbol, maybe you want to. So this variable would allow you to say, yes, show me this, or don't. Again, it's labeled yellow in that we don't view it, and it's our opinion, after doing a bunch of these, that you can if you want, you don't need to. But then we have variables that over the years, working with all of you guys and ourselves, is that we've realized that there are variables that are really helpful. They're really helpful, such as, this is a really old thing. So Overwrite for Black Box Builder, it's not the Black Box Builder, folks. It's the Symbol Builder. It is still called that, unfortunately, in documentation. But in this specific case, it really is a critical one. You want to set this path to a network share so that whether there's 2 of you or 200 of you, you're all looking at that very specific thing. Beneath that, it's going to show you the graphics of this is what gets affected and why. So it's kind of funny, we were doing some seminars back in the fall, and we showed this application in the beta form, and quite a few people walked up to us afterwards and said, oh, hey, can I just get the help files? And it's like, well, sure, you get the help files by purchasing the application, so you kind of get the best of both worlds with that. Now, I'm just going to take a couple minutes, and Greg is on the phone, so he may jump in and help me out. I'm going to launch the Hagerman Electrical Environment Connection. The first thing that you're going to notice is it's going to tell you what environment file is getting loaded. The first time you load it, it's going to load the out-of-the-box environment variable that is shipped with AutoCAD Electrical. Something else to note is that when this is opened, we create a backup file. So in the case that you mess something up and it's an oopsie, you can always go back to that backup file. So it was really important for us to make sure that you don't back yourself into a corner that you can't get out. So I'm just going to okay that guy. And again, you can see we've got things like the aliases, base documents. However, I just showed you the base executable. This is not supported by the application. So you can try to change this. It's not going to take it when you save that. Just one quick example. But let's look at symbols are a really, really good example of this. So earlier today, and I'm not going to go redo it, is schematic symbols. That's something that most of you probably want to put on a network share. Or maybe, again, if you're doing different projects for different customers that have very different needs, you may set up a Ford folder or a GM folder or whatever works for that particular type of project or customer. So how would I change this? Pretty simple. I'm just going to simply go down, choose where. In this case, I don't have a network, so I made a folder called the E drive. I may go down and I might want to say, hey, that goes to symbols. At the same time, you can see disable. That simply disables it or enables it. Also, when I hit the help in this particular case, this again shows it's green. In other words, probably want to do it. But then it shows you exactly, and I'm going to go through this, it's going to show you how this gets affected. So by not doing this variable, I go to schematic icon menu and I go to browse, I'm going to have to click every time to get back up to the E drive, the specific folder structure. This again should help you out. So so I can do a save, I can do all of that. I'm just going to go into AutoCAD Electrical and open a drawing that's out of our standard demo, if it wants to open. And there it is. So I'm just going to go to settings really quickly, just to show you this is where the environment file per project is contained. This just says I'm going to use the ENV file that I just edited. So now that I'm on this drawing, if I go up under schematic and go to my icon menu, here's all my different icon menus for the schematic symbols. But when I say browse, instead of going to where AutoCAD Electrical by definition puts it on your C drive under whatever folder it's been specified, this in this case is taking me to my folder called the E drive. Now, in this specific case, I don't have anything up there because I've not created any symbols to place up there. But I think you get the idea that you're going to choose, and we certainly help people out with this best practices. You're going to choose an area on your network. You're going to choose a folder structure that makes the most sense for you. And then through the environment application, you can specify those folders, put the environment files up on that network, and then all of your users can use those various environment files to get you to those specific things. This is not just for symbol and icon menus. This is also for catalog data. Whether you're using Access or SQL, that's a big part of implementation, is making sure all of your custom data goes into those catalogs. So you want to be able to easily share that without having to go to every user's desktop and changing it per user, and then, oops, we just did an upgrade. You got to go back and change it again. That's what the application is meant to do. Greg, do you have anything to add right now?
Yes, I'm just going to point out what we believe once you start, and some of you have already probably played with the environment file. The most important ones are your parts database and your symbol library. And even to the same extent, your icon menus. That's what we feel are some of the most important ones that you want to put up there. Now, this is a little bit off subject, but what a lot of people don't know, and it's no fault of anybody's, when you install the software, you can install it if you go to the configuration portion of the install. And all the Autodesk products have a configuration when you install the software. During the configuration, you can set it up to point it to a shared network folder for all your libraries and your parts database. That's half the battle right there. If you do that, then it'll already be set up to look at a shared network drive. And the same thing holds true with the manufacturers that you want to install. If you don't go through the configuration during the install, it's only going to install, Allen Bradley and a couple other manufacturers. The main point I'm trying to make here, though, is during the install process, you can take care of your symbol libraries and your parts database. Then it makes it a little bit easier when you're adjusting the environment file. Like the example Julie just gave you, that would be a classic case of, maybe you haven't started adding your symbols to the icon menus yet. You should, but maybe you haven't yet. So you've created a whole bunch of symbols, and every time you hit that browse button, you don't want it to go to the default out of the box, wherever that is, C drive 15 folders deep. So it makes it easier. Oh, okay. If I want to change that to a default, let's do that. As you know, when you create symbols, when you create circuits, there's going to be a default folder where those get saved. This is another reason why we disable some of these override for circuits, override for panels. So during the creation of your circuits, of your symbols, it will also default to what you've modified in the environment file. So some of the stuff you can take care of during install, but the rest of these, like you can't take care of the icon menus, which you can do in the environment file. So that would be one adjustment you'd want to make. The one that Julie just showed you, the one for the symbol builder, and that's what I just talked about. When you go to the symbol builder, which I do every day, and I create a symbol, the default folder is what it is out of the box. Then you got to browse every single time to your shared network folder. You don't want to have to do that. You want to have it default to your folder. And that's what these changes can take place of in the environment file. And getting back to the main point here, it's much easier to look at it from this app, get some help on what you're actually going to affect, and then simply browse in the location. Whereas when you have to do it manually, like I've had to do for many, many years, either, like Julie said, you got to type the path in. I'll usually go to Windows Explorer, browse to my folder, copy that folder to the clipboard, and then paste it in. It just takes time and energy. And that's all we're trying to do here is take this text file and just make it easier for you to share some of this stuff. And that's the whole point of this. It doesn't have anything to do with the functionality of the software. It doesn't whether you use the app or not, and that's the thing here. You're either going to change your environment file through the app, which I think it makes it easier, or you're going to do it manually. And the other big thing here, and I know Julie said it already, is take that original out of the box environment file and make multiple copies of it, even before you open up the app, even though the app will create a backup, which is fantastic. But I'm just paranoid about it because I have made mistakes many times on this, but I always have my backup. excuse me, but it's invaluable to me as a user. Like she said earlier, somebody wanted just the help menu, because there is no good explanation of what effects that you change. And we're just as proud of the help menu on this app than we are of being able to browse in, a simple folder. It educates you on the environment file itself, whether you make the changes through our app or whether you make them manually like you've been doing it now. As you can see, we took time to create some screen captures. Hey, you change this line in the environment app, this is what it's going to affect. There's the PLC one right there. When you insert a parametric PLC module, you get a quick pick list. Well, that's just a generic quick pick list that might not apply to everybody's PLC program addressing. You can add to that. I had one customer that, added their PLC addressing scheme in the environment file. So now when they go to insert one, they can just pick it from the list because it didn't exist before. They would have had to type it in. But getting back to the help menu, just by looking at the environment file from Notepad, it's very difficult to understand what you're actually affecting. That's what we're proud of in this, is it's going to educate you as well. Yeah, as you can see right here.
So any of you that have opened this up, we all know it's important, but it's not very user friendly.
And it's very difficult whether you go online. There's a couple of documents out there that I have found over the years, but with the help menu that we put in place, blows them all away that I have found anyway, and there's not very many of them.
Another really good example, I had a customer a couple weeks ago that they were putting a new network in, right? So the old servers were getting decommissioned, the new servers were coming online, and oops, it's not the same network path, whether it's UNC or the P drive became the E drive. So in that case, you can certainly do a search and replace, but it was a good time for them to also just kind of reorganize as they got deeper into the application. So this application just helped very quickly get through that process. And again, we don't recommend that you go and change every single one of these variables. It's, like I said, there's over 50 of them, but there are probably, Greg, 10 to 12 maybe, that can really save you guys time and energy.
And
I mean,
whether
we all...
And whether you use
we hate...
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, we all hate clicks and picks, right? I don't want to click through folder structures. It drives me nuts.
Yeah. And I always recommend any new class I teach, with customer or otherwise, use the software for a little bit. You'll be deciding, hey, we need to share this. We need to put this on a network drive. We need everybody to be using the same of this. Use the software for a couple months before, you go and start, just, oh, that looks like a good one. We should change this. Besides the parts database and the symbol library, which I would change, right away, whether you do it on install or through the app. Besides that, use the software for a little bit. You'll decide, hey, as a group, we need to share this. We need to, when we hit browse, when we insert a component or a symbol, we need it to go to this default location. You only get that through the user experience, through using the software. And then once you are ready to start sharing some more stuff, the app just makes it a lot easier to do that.
Absolutely. So the app is currently available, Hagerman.com, go under Software Connection Apps. more than welcome to talk to anybody about this. As far as licensing, it's $295. This is not, you do not need this application for every user. This is not like Vault. This really typically, unless you've got multiple groups, a lot of times one license will be completely sufficient to edit these environment files. There is optional maintenance that we can get you information. Again, phone support. You're having, it's like the app's great, but I still don't understand the specific variable. That's what our phone support is all about. And again, just a plug, for Hagerman and Company, when Greg and I joined the organization a couple of years ago, we really concentrated in controls. And, we're the crazy ants in the corner that, most gearheads don't want to deal with, and yet we can really be the most efficient parts of any, organization. So because, Greg and several other of our SEs, they have real world experience. So training is not just clicks and picks. Training really tries to teach you how to do your job. Going through health checks, how are you doing it today? Are there better ways? Different implementations, strategies, and best practices. So we really are, kind of your go-to source because we live your world and we understand what you guys go through on a daily basis. Really good example right now, for any of you all that are working at home and oops, we don't have a very good VPN into your company network, you can use the environment file to say, hey, I'm working just on my laptop. So I want to use a local environment file to point back everything to my C drive. So that's kind of a good example of what we're going through in today's world. We'll make sure that you get our contact information, but both Greg and I are here to answer questions, help you guys out, with anything to do with controls. Open it up for some questions and answers, if there are any.
Yep, I got one question. Can the environment file be per project with each being a different path? We vault each project in its own path. Once you change the default, it does become the default for all projects. So what you can do in that case, and we have people doing this, is you could have, if it required it, multiple environment files. So if you're working for GM on one job, they might be pointing, you might have all their stuff on one shared network location. When you're doing for another project, you might have folders set up differently in a shared location. You can take advantage of just using a different environment file.
Any other questions?
And obviously, if you do, you know where to find us.
So stay safe, wash your hands. My mom is so happy that we all are saying that these days. I'm going to turn this back over to Ashley, and again, feel free to reach out to talk about your situation and how we can help.
Okay, well, thank you guys for the presentation, and thank you everyone for joining us today. Again, we will send out a recording of the presentation. You will get that in an email tomorrow. So look forward to that, and we will see you next time. Thank you.